Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So I recently did a video discussing this trend of influencers, really major luxury influencers, moving away from luxury bags, selling off their luxury bags from brands like Chanel to Hermes, instead opting for more either mid-range or contemporary brands or indie brands. And I also discussed in that video a recent article, and I've seen a few articles pop up since then around this phenomenon, around this major theme of handbag lovers moving towards indie or mid-range brands or contemporary brands that we all know like Coach and Tory Burch. Now, personally for me, I'm not at a stage where I want to sell off all my luxury bags. I am somebody that likes to cycle my bags in and out, but I will say this year I have been a little bit more tempted by some of these contemporary or indie brands. I'm not really at the stage where I'm wanting to sell off my bags or anything like that. I also think I have slowed down because of my lifestyle, but I do think there has been greater interest in some of these more indie and contemporary bag brands for a multitude of reasons that I discussed in that video. Even if I just think about some brands that have become actually really quite popular in recent years, Helene to Demelier to Menu, Atelier, a lot of these brands that compete with luxury brands in terms of quality and craftsmanship, they just don't have necessarily the same recognizable designer logos or branding or heritage, things like that. I also think there has been a lot of popularity with even fashion brands, more indie or emerging fashion brands coming up with designer bags that have gained popularity, be it Totem or La Mer or Kate. I was going down a bit of a rabbit hole and looking at some of these indie bags of the past, and I thought for today I'd just talk about some of these indie throwback bags that were of the 2010s, I would say. Some a little bit more recent, some more of the 2010s era, but I just wanted to talk about these bags today. Now, the first bag that came to mind, especially with luxury YouTube, and this was a really popular style, and this was the Boy with two Y's, the brand Boy, and this was the Carl bag. They also had other bags in this range, but their most popular bag was the Carl bag. It had this very signature large buckle, which is very signature of the brand Boy, top handle, and it had a crossbody strap, it had feet, and it was really popular, I would say, like just pre-pandemic. Something about this design being a top handle crossbody, it had a signature design element, and it was a very substantial bag. It was a leather bag. The pricing was well under $1,000, and it sold on popular retailers like Farfetch, right? When I think Farfetch was on the up, and a lot of these other online retailers. But it's interesting, it's not a style that you see that often anymore. I don't see a lot of influencers wearing this bag, promoting this bag. Definitely one of these bags that had a moment, I would say around 2018, 2019. Another bag that I was also thinking about was from the brand Manser Gabrielle. Now, I actually still think Manser Gabrielle is a brand that many still love. I'll still on occasion see a bag like this pop up on my feed. They have tote bags that I think have a really timeless look about them. A lot of their bags are made in Italy with really nice leather. I've personally never tried them, but a lot of people say that for the quality and price that you pay, it's quite reasonable. But I remember back in the day, there was this style, and it was their bucket bag. And they were usually more miniature in size, quite minimal in design, but also very timeless. I don't think when I look at this bag, it looks dated to me. Yes, there are times where bucket bags are more prominent or more popular, and I think a lot of Manser Gabrielle bags, not all, but a lot of them do have more of a timeless look. Another style that they had, the Cloud Clutch, which was more of a response to the Bottega pouch that was popular 2019, 2020, especially around the time, I think more like 2020, when that bag was really difficult to get. Manser Gabrielle kind of swooped in and made it sort of like an alternative, proportionally looked different enough, but yeah, that was a style that also had a bit of a moment. I was looking on their website, and I get why they're still a brand that people like to go to. There is a timelessness about some of their more popular styles, and the price point is quite reasonable. Another bag that was really popular on luxury YouTube was the Sunrev Mini Maestra. The appeal of this was it was a very like smart looking top handle style style that could be turned into a backpack, made for like a really good work bag if you had to travel in between places. It was really nice. These bags were quite durable in that they were often in kind of like a stamped or embossed leather or pebbled leather. These bags I think were at their height pre-pandemic, but I think during the pandemic, especially because a lot of people were working from home, concept of an office work bag or even backpack styles, bags that you would travel more often with, weren't as popular. But yeah, I remember this was a bag that was heavily promoted on YouTube with a lot of luxury influencers. There were often giveaways or special influencer promotions around the style. But yeah, it's just not a style that you see as much anymore. Another bag that I was really tempted by in the 2010s, I never got it, but I was really tempted by it. I think, again, my style has changed. Also, the styles have changed. And this is the Donslant Phoebe bag. It had a very unique style. At this time, a lot of bags were really boxy in structure. They had really unique, quirky color combinations. I think about the color blocking of the 2010s were really popular. You would see in fashion and handbags. It had this artsy vibe. Think really seasonal Celine luggage bags to, I think of certain bags from Proenza Schooler, but they had this style and it was really popular. They also had the Johnny bag, which is another kind of artsy, abstract, sculptural shape, but they were more approachable in price than I think of brands like Celine or Proenza Schooler, but still had the artsy 2010s vibe. Another bag that I also think of during the 2010s, during the height of Instagram, social media, fashion posting, is the Cult Gaia Ark bag. And I still really like Cult Gaia. I think they offer some really cool bags. I think this bag put the brand on more people's radars. It was semicircle in shape, quite architectural, made of bamboo materials, but it also had other materials like plexiglass and PVC. But the style, I think, also leaned into that boho style, like the 2010s boho style that was really popular. I think if you wore a lot of Chloe, this would have been a really popular bag. It was also one of these bags that I vividly remember had gained a lot of popularity on Instagram. It had a really distinct, recognizable look. It was also interesting because it was more of an indie brand instead of a brand like Chloe or Celine, like one of these legacy brands that become recognized due to magazines or due to celebrities. But it was also a style that was quite heavily duped. But yeah, I think Cult Gaia actually makes some really cool, unique vacation resort bags, very sculptural. It was one of these bags that cut through the noise because it had a very distinct silhouette. Another bag that I also remember at this time that was really popular was the Stodd Bisset bag. Now, this was a bag that was also very popular on social media, also worn by celebrities like Alexa Chung, but leaned into that more like structured bucket bag. Was also interesting about this style, and I think a lot of bags from Stodd or Stodd, I don't know how you pronounce this brand, was they had a lot of bags in this PVC or this clear plastic material. This type of design had a moment in the 2010s that also was quite noticeable on social media. Another style that they had that was really popular was also the Shirley. And the last bag on my list is from a brand called Zadig and Voltater, and the style I want to specifically highlight here that I think was the most popular bag from this brand was the Rocky. So they had different variations like the Rocky Soft and Nano. It kind of had like a wallet on chain, fold, like clutch look to it, but it definitely had this edgy rock and roll style with this Parisian chic that was really popular, I think, in the 2010s that you don't really see that often now. It was a very specific to a millennial concert goer is what I think of. This is like the perfect sort of like concert bag, rectangular, compact, casual, but it still had a defined enough logo. Very much in line with the styles if I think of brands YSL in the 2010s to even brands like All Saints, that kind of look, that very edgy rock and roll style. For the alt girl of the 2010s, like Zadig and Voltater was kind of a brand many would go to if it wasn't All Saints, and then there was like upper tiers like YSL. Again, it's not really a brand I see much people talk about or wear anymore. I think like the more alternative style in fashion, I think it's more kind of that Gen Z Y2K meets Apocalypse. If I think about the way a brand like Acne Studios is now, or Diesel, that kind of style is more the cool edgy girl of current day, whereas I think this is like a very specific to the 2010s kind of style. But yeah, it's just very interesting to look at these various bags of the 2010s from these more so indie brands, and how the alt girl of the 2010s went for like Zadig and Voltater, the boho girl maybe went for like a cult Gaia, the Phoebe bag for like the more like artsy style. But yeah, it's just very interesting to see how fashion has evolved and changed. Just fun to look at handbags of the past. And that's my video for today. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.